Hi there and welcome to Atoll TV's ISO 45001 playlist. I'm going to review the requirements of Clause 4.2, Understanding the Needs and Expectations of Workers and Other Interested Parties. I'm going to break it down and turn it into something we can all understand. You'll then be able to apply this to your own organisation system and understand what the requirements will look like for you. No more guessing. Hi, I'm Jackie Stapleton and you're watching Atoll TV, the place to expand your career and learn from experts. I'm the Director of Auditor Training Online and I'm here to help you on your way to implementing or auditing against ISO 45001, the 2018 revision. While you're here, I would love you to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on anything exciting in the future. To start off with, I'm going to ask you a question. What clause in ISO 45001 do you need support in unpacking and determining what it might look like applied to your organisation? Or if you're an auditor, which clause causes the most uncertainty? Comment below as I'd love to help you. I do need you to stick around until the end so I can share with you something quite different within this clause, which is specific to ISO 45001 only. Okay, let's get started. Clause 4.2 is called Understanding the Needs and Expectations of Workers and Other Interested Parties. There are a few points in this clause, so I'm going to break them down and explain them bit by bit. The first point, point A, states that the organisation shall determine the other interested parties in addition to workers that are relevant to the OH&S management system. I'm going to say that again. The organisation shall determine the other interested parties in addition to workers that are relevant to the OH&S management system. Okay, let's get that in our heads. Before we can understand this fully, I think we need to take a step back and understand what an interested party is. I checked this in the Terms and Definitions clause of ISO 45001, so that's clause 3, and it states that an interested party is a person or organisation that can affect, be affected by, or perceive itself to be affected by a decision or activity. That makes sense then, doesn't it? We need to ask ourselves then that when we make a decision, a change, or introduce a new activity, a product even, who might be impacted by this? A great tip is to separate who might be impacted either internally to the business or externally. This internal and external suggestion is not a mandatory requirement, but I find it helps me to think more broadly. As an example, internally this could be employees, workers' representatives, the owners or shareholders of the business, or even the board of directors. Externally, this could be suppliers, subcontractors, competitors, regulators, government bodies, customers, and even visitors to the workplace. Identifying these interested parties is the first step. And then the next point in this clause, point B, states that the organisation shall determine the relevant needs and expectations, in other words requirements, of workers and other interested parties. So, now that we have identified who these internal and external interested parties are, we need to determine what they expect and need from us. I've actually seen this laid out quite nicely in an audit I conducted recently. This company simply uses an Excel spreadsheet, and on worksheet 1 they've listed their interested parties, whether they're internal or external, and then finally the reason for their inclusion, which I think is a great addition as it demonstrates their thought process. Then on worksheet 2 they have extended from this list of just interested parties and added another column documenting each interested party's needs and expectations. So, for example, employees expect and require appropriate OH&S training. And any visitors to the site, like delivery drivers for example, would expect that they are entering a safe workplace that complies with legal requirements. So to recap, this first list is what the interested parties expect from you and your business. What this organisation has also done is extended this one step further, and they've documented it in their final column what their company's needs and expectations are from these interested parties. So it goes both ways. It's a relationship. And I do think that while this additional step isn't a requirement in this clause, it really opens up that whole relationship and demonstrates that these needs and expectations, they go two ways. If I recap on these examples from earlier, I can explain this two-way street. Again, employees expect and require appropriate OH&S training from the organisation, and in turn the organisation expects compliance to OH&S requirements. No brainer really. And any visitors to the site, again like delivery drivers, would expect that they are entering a safe workplace that complies to legal requirements, and in turn the organisation would expect that any visitors will follow all requirements while they're on site. Now, before we move on to the final point in clause 4.2, let us revisit the clause requirements for points A and B and see whether they now make sense with what we've learnt and understood. Okay, the organisation shall determine A, the other interested parties in addition to workers that are relevant to the OH&S management system. Check, we achieved this by determining who these were, both internal and external, to the organisation. Okay, then we've got B, and it states that the organisation shall determine the relevant needs and expectations of workers and other interested parties. Check again, we achieved this by documenting what each of the identified interested parties expected from an organisation. So compliance, training, and so on. Of course, I've only used a few examples here, and when you go through this process within your own organisation, it will be so much clearer because you understand your business. Do remember though, and this is a really important point to note, it's a requirement that when you conduct this process that you consult with your workers. ISO 45001 specifically states non-managerial workers are to be consulted for this particular process. So you need to get to the workers that are out there on the field or on the production line. I can't stress this enough. If you cannot demonstrate that you've conducted this process with consultation of non-managerial workers, you will be at risk of a non-conformance. So on that cheery note, let's move to the final point in the clause, which is point C. And it states that the organisation shall determine which of these needs and expectations are or could become legal requirements and other requirements. This should be a natural process from the work you've completed for points A and B. See, the standard doesn't make it that hard for us. Even in the examples I used for the needs and expectations previously, we identified local laws, regulations, and even OH&S requirements. So of course this will prompt the identification of what I'm going to call a risk. Where needs and expectations do identify legal requirements, then the next step is to determine what they are and how your organisation is going to comply with them. This does feed nicely into clause 613, determination of legal requirements and other requirements, which I'll cover in a later video. Now, this point not only refers to legal requirements, which we know what this means, of course. It's stuff we have to comply with, right? It's not an option. We have to comply. That's your legal stuff. This point also refers to other requirements. It seems rather vague, right? All these other requirements, how long's a piece of string? Other requirements can be contained though. It is essentially what your organisation chooses to conform with. So this could be your own OH&S management system. It could be contractual arrangements with your customers, employment agreements, or even voluntary OH&S programs within the community. Define what these other requirements are based on your initial list of interested parties and their needs and expectations, of course. Like if you take a helicopter view of this now, you'll see that this process in itself has identified risks and opportunities to your business. I love it when you can see it like this. It isn't just a pointless exercise to tick a few boxes against a standard. This process actually benefits your organization. It helps you to identify the risks so you can put in place controls or treatment plans. It helps you to identify the opportunities out there and leverage off them to be proactive in your OH&S management system. This is fantastic stuff, so get excited by it. Okay, that's all the excitement I can take for the day. So thanks for sticking around to the end so I can share with you the one unique difference this clause has when compared to other ISO standards. It's one word, and that word is worker. The clause name for 4.2 in the other ISO standards is simply called Understanding the Needs and Expectations of Interested Parties, whereas in ISO 45001 it has already been identified that workers are an interested party. They are not leaving it up to the organisation to identify this themselves. They are already telling us that workers are to be included. Makes sense though, doesn't it? If you're going to find anything that is different in ISO 45001, it will always be something to do with workers. So thanks for joining me, and do not forget that Auditor Training Online is a recognised training provider. So we're confident that you need to enrol with us now. Go to our website and enrol to transform your work and industry experience into a recognised qualification. And also, please subscribe to Atoll TV and leave a comment or question, as I truly do want to help you to join the best career out there with me, auditing. Happy auditing!